All right, guys, back here for Martial Arts in the Life, our first fight review video. I've got Chris McLeod, uh, BJJ black belt. You did some Kempo too, right?
Yeah, I have a second
Yeah.
degree in Tempo.
So a guy that's got, man, what, 20 years in jiu-jitsu at this point, something like that.
God, don't talk about it, but yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry, man. You don't look a day over 60. You're good.
I don't feel a day over 60.
All right, man. So UFC 251 over the weekend.
Yeah, it was a good card.
It was, man. I thought it was a pretty stacked card, honestly. 3 title fights in one night. I definitely wasn't expecting to be up till 2 a.m.
No, worse to be in Abu Dhabi. They started at 2 a.m. They didn't finish. It would have been like 8 when they finished.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that on the fighters, man. Like, oh yeah, by the way, you guys are gonna fight at like 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like that had to be rough. I wonder if anybody, went through the process of changing their sleep schedule and everything for the fight.
I don't know. I mean, obviously the main event, some of them didn't have time, but
Yeah.
Masvidal, they wouldn't have time to change it up, but
No, man. I think Paige was thoroughly asleep for that armbar.
It was a slick armbar. It was. I actually didn't notice the very first time that when she was defending the armbar, it was already underneath her arm. It was under the armpit, and her defense she had on was underneath the, kind of underneath and over top, trying to hold on to it, which, it's kind of a matter of time at that point. But the girl on bottom, what was it, Rivas? God, I'm so bad with names. Yeah, Rivas. She's BJJ black belt also, I believe, right? And it was slick. Yeah. She took it when she. Paige has, for lack of other things, she's missing. She's pretty explosive when she tries to escape from stuff. She does.
Yeah. Real slippery. Yeah, she's real slippery, real hard to get a hold of.
Yeah. I'll apologize before we get too far into this. I jacked my neck up at class yesterday. I don't even know how. And so I can look left, I can look right, but I can't look down. So
well, how dare you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? How dare you?
Yeah, I'm only doing it one day right now because of the whole COVID thing. So
yeah, I feel it, man. It's been rough on everybody.
I'm good though. I got baby Yoda. We're good.
So overall, who do you give submission of the night to? There's a whole 2 of them the entire card. Preliminaries and
I think I have to give it to the arm.
Really?
Just the armbar. It was the armbar itself was tight, especially once it was belly down. But it was more the transition to it while Paige was trying to escape. That was as technical as you can expect from somebody that level. It was.
Yeah.
It was. Did you see the? I normally watch the post fight, but I didn't actually in this one. Did you see who got submission of the night? If they named it that or just performance?
I didn't even see. The only 2 submissions were Rebus with the armbar and Americani with that beautiful anaconda.
Yeah, and that was a nice anaconda, but he set it up and it looked like he was kind of looking for the arm in, and it was they were both nice. I guess I could see an argument for, but it was a fairly normal progression for catching the anaconda, where the armbar was a little different the way she set it up, and had to catch it during the transition. So I'll go with the armbar.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what makes it so difficult is you have to look at how the opponent was performing. In the Americani fight, that was a fight back and forth. When you look at the Paige fight, it didn't look like Paige showed up to fight. That whole beginning of that fight, she's backing off. She's not really engaging.
That's true, and it was also first round, so she wasn't slippery yet. Versus later where the anaconda hit. So good point.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those tough calls. I mean, 2 submissions in the night, or there was only 2 submissions that night, and both of them were beautiful submissions.
Yeah,
it seemed like a night of decisions.
The previous card, and I think the previous card or the one before it had as many submissions as it had anything else. Was it the card immediately before? I think it had 4 submissions.
I don't know, man. I was in Myrtle Beach for it. Didn't even bother watching it.
I have to
So,
go back. I can kind of, while we're doing this, I'll kind of
yeah.
look. But yeah, there have been a few more submissions. What did you think about them going back to a 30-foot octagon versus 25-foot? Do you think it made a difference? Because the 25-foot octagon for the previous, I don't know how many cards exactly, but during this quarantine session, they went to the 25, and it appeared to me, whether or not it was a direct result of that or not, the pace seemed to be a little bit higher, and there seemed to be a little bit more engagement,
Yeah.
with the fight.
Yeah, definitely a lot more engagement with the 25-foot. 30-foot just gives them more room for Jose Aldo to run a lap.
That is so.
But yeah, like, I don't know. I personally, I've loved all these COVID fights. This whole audience-free thing has been amazing.
Me too, actually. I would not be upset, although I was set to go and watch the Columbus card immediately before the quarantine took place. I had my tickets and everything, but I wouldn't be devastated if it was a while before there's live audiences again. I mean, a live audience definitely adds to the atmosphere of the fight, but I've always been a big fan of the Ultimate Fighter, the fights on the Ultimate Fighter, because of the fact that you can hear the cornerman, you can hear the impact of the strikes and the slams. You can get a little bit better idea whether or not they're doing some damage. There's been a few where you've had a little bit of taunting and whatnot in it, and it's just kind of giving it a different. I don't want it to be that way forever, but it wouldn't bother me that way forever.
Yeah. It was nice when Fight Pass tried pulling the whole corner cam thing, and I just don't think it really panned out the way they were hoping it would. Where you could go in and be like, okay, I want to look in this guy's corner and see what his coaches are saying, and then look at the other side. And
I think there's been a couple times as well where they didn't have a very competent translator, and the corner wasn't speaking English.
yeah.
But yeah, I did look, by the way. It was the last card in Austin.
Was it?
Yeah, it had 4 submissions. So
sad I missed it, man.
Not gone for those people saying that submissions are dead and gone. They're not gone. They're still submissions.
Yes. There's just fewer of them. There's fewer of them. I mean, really, what do you attribute the fewer submissions to?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any mystery to it. I think there's one big, I've said for a while that there's one big contributing factor to certain submissions being difficult to get. The first and foremost and obvious one is simply that the fighters themselves, there is truth to the fact that there's been phases and stages of MMA fighting, and jiu-jitsu first, wrestling, then the sprawl and brawl, et cetera, et cetera. There's been an awful lot of stages, and people have had to adapt to that. And as such, people are pretty adept at submissions themselves at this point, especially defending them. That being said, from my personal experience and whatnot, when you are fighting in MMA versus in the gym or anywhere else, when you have your hand taped and they tape your entire hand, then they put a glove over that, your wrist is taped, then they put the glove over, then they tape the wrist of the glove. So now you have tape, glove, and you're grabbing onto someone else who, especially at the higher weight levels, already have gigantic wrists to begin with. People, huge hands, huge forearms. Then you're taking your hand, which is already taped, already gloved. You're grabbing onto a wrist, which is taped, gloved, and taped again. It's difficult to hold that for things like Kimuras and whatnot, simply because their ability, especially with sweat, to pull out of those submissions makes it a little more difficult. Also makes it more difficult to set up the way you would. Some people like to go for things like rear naked chokes and whatnot, driving the hands underneath the chin and whatnot. So those type of things, I think, really play a part in landing submissions, but I don't think it's any more difficult really than putting it on the skill of the fighters.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that the rise of like the BJJ pro fights have kind of helped or kind of pulled back some of the bigger names for BJJ and MMA?
Do you mean there are not as many big names in going to MMA from BJJ?
Or yeah, like there's just not as much talent there as there used to be.
Um, I think the talent is there. You can't argue that guys like Jones and Gordon Ryan and whatnot are insanely skilled. They're insanely
Yeah,
skilled. I
absolutely,
think
absolutely.
if they ever decided, excuse me, to make that transition, I know Gordon was, kind of going back and forth about it a little while. First of all, I think his attitude would probably transition well over to love him or hate him kind of thing, and would make his personality in interviews and whatnot. It would work. But I think the fighters that are training right now, similar to MMA, having their rule set and having to do certain things in order to win, there are certain things that are happening in the sport realm that are making the transition to MMA a little bit more difficult. Takedowns and countering takedowns are a huge part of MMA. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as sport continues to go the way it does, and, they're taking in, EBI rules and whatnot, or ending fights in overtime, already on the ground, already in submission positions where, for a long time, goes to overtime, whoever scored that first takedown was going to win. The more they take away that, it becomes more difficult, in my opinion. I think if you look at somebody who had way too much time on their hand, took at one point a few years ago and documented all the MMA fights that had taken place in the big organizations, whatever they may have been at the time, and took people who were skilled in submissions, said how many of those fights did that person who was a skilled submission fighter, be it catch or whatever, all the way to jiu-jitsu, how many times did they end up on top? And when they were on top, how many times did they win the fight? Then they took those same fighters and said when they were on the bottom, how many times they win the fight. And if a skilled submission fighter ends up on top, they're winning the fight a good majority of the time. When they're ending up on the bottom, if they manage to stay there and not escape, which is certainly a game plan, a strategy now, they're losing a lot. So until we hit that crossbreed athlete that we see glimpses of, with people like GSP and fighters nowadays even, we're going to continue to have that discrepancy, excuse me, and the submission fighters hitting the submission.
All right, so plugging right along here. Knockouts. There's a whole 2 on the night, just like submissions. Who do you give it to, Peter Yan or this guy whose name I cannot pronounce?
Without a doubt. Hold on, I got to go back from the Austin. I was looking at the submissions on the card. And there were some good ones on that card too. I wish we had done a review on that one. Yeah, man, how do you say that guy's name?
Exactly.
I think. Anyway, yeah, definitely the walk off. That was Marcotte-esque. That was. He has an attitude that makes watching him fun. My favorite fighter of all time is Genki Sudo. I love that guy. Loved him. And anytime you have someone who is able, in my opinion, is able to do that, bring attention to himself and to the fight, and make it seem somewhat fun without crossing that line and coming across as disrespectful, which I don't think he really did. He just had a different fighting style. Then it makes the fight itself more interesting. And then to land the knockout shot on his debut, man, that was a nasty shot too.
Yeah,
That's the type of thing like Liddell hit where you don't fight the same after you get hit like that. I'd like to see how this guy recovers from it, how well he can take a shot.
Yeah. That's one of the ones where the doctor hands you your suspension on the way out of the cage. Says, "Don't come back for a little while."
Man. Of course, you also got the other end of it where once you get knocked out like that, what's the worst that's going to happen to you next time you step in a cage? Unless you're afraid of it happening again, nothing worse can happen. Yeah, not true, of course. But, how about the Aldo fight? You yourself, did you? Did you have big of a problem as Dana White apparently had with the referee's handling of the end of that fight?
Not really. Peter Yan came into that, and I think he looks smaller than usual. going against Aldo. I don't know if it was that he looked smaller or Aldo was just huge.
I don't know. I honestly, I didn't notice that at the time, but yeah, I'd have to go back and look. But
Yeah.
Aldo, I'm sure, had an easier cut than he did last time.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Aldo looked great though. Especially
really
those
did.
first few rounds. Like he was intense. I had Jan winning it right out of the gate. I was like, oh, it's 3-round fight. And that did not turn into that at all.
No.
No, man.
I asked whether or not you thought that Jose had his rib popped, cracked, broken, whatever in that first round, or do you think it was just the shot on the ground hit the right spot, winced him up for a minute?
At the
end of that,
I'm gonna say it was that shot on the ground. He fought excellent for the first couple of rounds, even after taking a big blow.
Yeah, he recovered, which amazed me.
Yeah,
I thought I was along the lines of Wonder Boy. I think sent that little tweet that talked about whether or not he thought his rib was broken. Mm-hmm. Prior to him falling, or actually prior to him shooting, he threw a jab. If I remember correctly, I've only seen that fight once at this point, but if I remember correctly, Aldo threw a jab across at the same time that he absorbed a body kick from Jan. And it was immediately after that or soon after that, he shot for the takedown. And that's not, Jose doesn't shoot for a takedown very often. So I thought it landed pretty hard, and then he shot. So I thought at that moment, man, I wonder if he just got hurt. And then when he was on the ground, he took that shot, winced up, and, basically kind of did get saved by the bell. Then, like you're saying, man, I had him winning rounds 2 and 3, actually. Yeah. He definitely won round 2, in my opinion. But then Jan, round 4, it was almost like he was waiting. Like he was just, I'm not turning it on until round 4, and then bam.
Yeah. I was happy to see him turn it on too, man, because I've watched a lot of people fight Aldo over the years, and I'm like, oh, man, they got Aldo's number. They got him. And then just watch Aldo slowly dominate them for 5 rounds.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, man. So seeing that kind of trending that way with Jan, I was like, oh, here we go. 5 rounds of Aldo beating this poor guy up. And luckily Jan came back. There was some money on that fight, and I'm glad I didn't lose it.
Oh, did you? Are you a bettor? Do you put the money down?
Just with a few friends, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was happy to see him win that one.
Now I can't trust the judges enough to put my money down on fights. With the risk, they're going to go to the judges.
Yeah. You want to talk about that? Let's talk about Volkanovski and Holloway.
Okay.
Even Dana was standing in the back after that fight, going like, "Huh."
You froze up again. Are you back? All right.
Yeah, it looks like the whole thing just crashed out on us. Looks like we're still recording though, so hopefully we don't have any issues there. We go ahead and get this pulled back up to full screen.
Are you? You're editing this afterwards though, so we don't have any stamp.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Well, what did you think of that decision?
Normally, when there's a decision that I disagree with, and I find out that most people disagreed with it, there is still a small segment, John Jones is an example of that. I thought that he lost, 1 or 2 of his title defenses. And when you go on, you find out that maybe a majority of them, but there's always that handful that don't disagree. Mm-hmm. You have to take it from the champion. You have to, whatever the excuse may be. I have not found, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I have not found a single comment or post on a social media page that thinks that Holloway did not win that fight.
Yeah. He definitely did, man.
Yeah. You agree, disagree?
Yeah, dude, Holloway won that fight. There's I don't know what the judges were drinking. I don't know what they were paying attention to. I don't know if they messed up and swapped the cards around and scored it backwards, but
I can't believe. First of all, I can't believe that it wasn't unanimous that one fighter gave it to Holloway, but the other 2 gave it to Volkanovski. But robbery is too big a word. I've seen the word robbery. Robbery to me means that it was not even a close fight. That the one fighter dominated to the point where they probably won 4 to 5 of the rounds, possibly 10-8s, and somehow they still get it wrong. To me, this wasn't a robbery. However, that being said, it does not mean just because it's not a robbery that it is not an absolutely putrid decision, and that's what this was.
Yeah.
First, 1 and 2, you can't argue. He dropped them in both, even for a moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would tell that 3, 4, and 5, Holloway did not win any of them.
Yep.
In order to not win this fight. And not only did he win the third round, in my opinion, even though it was close, Holloway took his foot off the gas. So, in my opinion, it's not as if Volkanovski found a hole and started kind of like Rose and when she was fighting. Yeah, when she was fighting Andrade, she lost the third round, and it looked as if, man, if this was a 5-rounder, Rose might have been in a lot of trouble. That wasn't the case. This was a matter of Holloway already won the fight, and he took his foot off the gas. And it was close. It wasn't a robbery, but it was the wrong decision.
Yeah. I mean, you can make that case that Holloway took his foot off the gas, but that third round, I don't even really have it that close. I still think Holloway was dominating up to that point. I mean, Volkanovski was starting to find his rhythm and coming back, but I don't think it was enough to win that round.
Oh, he didn't win 3. And in fact, something in 3 caused him to change his strategy completely. So he obviously thought he was losing.
Yeah.
When you fight a certain way for 3 rounds, and it's a 5-round fight, and you suddenly think, I have to finish this guy, you don't keep fighting the same way. You think you're losing.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it'd be interesting if the UFC brought in the open scoring that like Invicta's doing. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they announce it at the end of the round.
Yeah. Tell you who's ahead on the cards. I think if UFC brought that in, the judges would be held to a lot higher standard.
I think so.
The only thing that worries me is fighters, taking their foot off the gas, knowing that, oh, hey, I've won 2 out of 3 rounds.
Even if they didn't announce it to the fighters, if it became public as it was happening, at least it would give the announcers, it would give, because there's certain fights where the announcers can influence the people who are watching at home because there's no scoring happening and all you have is, the play-by-play. And they may be biased, they may be seeing something different. And as a result, if you watch that same fight without sound, it's a closer fight.
Mm-hmm.
If they showed the scoring at the end, at least in that scenario, it would allow the other people at home, people making the play-by-play, to realize that maybe they're not seeing it correctly. And there'd be a lot of fights where people weren't so flabbergasted at the end of it, like, oh my God, what a robbery, because they've been listening to the play-by-play for 5 rounds or 3. That being said, there is a bigger problem with the judges and the referees in the sport of MMA right now than there are fighters. Problems with fighters. And for a long time, that wasn't the case in my opinion. There was a lot of fighters who were fighting for decision, a lot of fighters who were, just being unprofessional, not making weight, a lot of problems with on the fighter side of it. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the biggest problem in MMA by far is the judging, followed by the refereeing. And refereeing absolutely is a hard job. So
I remember what was it? Probably 6 or 7 years ago watching UFC and just thinking to myself, like, this is 5 of the most boring rounds of my life.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of that's changed. And I feel like people are actually coming out to fight again. And
especially now that they're showing the prelims. For so many years, I've been watching since UFC 2, I believe. But I was only like a wee lad at the time. I'm not that old. And there was a long time where all you saw was the main card unless, you bought the DVD or whatnot, and you'd see more fights. But now that they show the prelims, those prelim fighters, man, there's been some good fights on the prelims.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're fighting to get there on that main card. There's that boost, and they want it. And it's making good fights.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Masvidal and Usman, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I'm not a Usman hater. I actually think that he is incredibly underrated, and his overall skill set, especially since seeing him fight Covington, is probably one of the best in MMA. And
Yeah, absolutely agree.
I was, even though he dominated the fight, I was more impressed, given that, with Masvidal, because I expected him to be taken down at will. I really did. I just given his past, his fighting, and how aggressive he can be with his striking, how good Usman is at takedowns, I really did expect him to be taken down a lot easier than he was. So I was impressed with his takedown defense. That being said, Masvidal took that fight on short notice, and at the same time, Usman took that fight on short notice, and he had to do the smart thing to retain his fight title. It was boring. It was very boring.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that I noticed, man, exiting out of that first round, is Masvidal looked tired.
Yeah.
You know, he was not his usual upbeat, fast self. Like he looked exhausted. I'm wondering what that cut did to him that fast.
Probably a lot. I don't know how often you've cut weight, but
yeah, definitely a few times. It's not fun.
It's definitely worse than the fight. And,
yeah,
way worse. And it had to have taken a lot out of him. But at the same time, you know, he also still was defending that takedown all the way until the fifth. And when he would break away, he would explode. You know, to a decent degree. Every time he broke out, he still, you know, went for it. He didn't break away and Usman, you know, just kind of did what he wanted, put him back against the fence or put him on the ground. He was he definitely wanted to see what he could do in the first round, I think. Masvidal has a striking style which is really different and offbeat than you know, a lot of fighters do. Like Volkanovski, he has a fighting style that, although it's very effective, you can still see it. You can see that he steps offline. Your cat is trying to get away, by the way.
yeah, I see this.
Don't let it.
They hang out in this window, man.
But yeah, you know, somebody like Volkanovski has a very distinctive, you know, slip or step offline style, and it's primarily what he does until he starts shooting for the takedown. But as far as his striking goes, Masvidal has a really offbeat. You know, his timing is not what a normal fighter's timing seems to be, and as a result, I think it makes the grappler, makes the person trying to close the distance a little more hesitant because of that. And in the first round, he landed a couple shots, especially one of this to the body. That a lot of guys, I think, would have gotten either taken out or put down by. It was a hard shot. I don't remember exactly when in the first it happened, but it was a body shot that it was hard. And it was, that guy can take a shot, and that's what I think is keep him there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he's tough. He's definitely tough. What do you think of Masvidal saying that he wants an immediate rematch? You think he should get it, or you think we should move on to the next guy?
Not immediate. I think Burns deserves it. Burns got COVID. He tested positive, and you know, had to step out. And you know, Burns was as impressive against Woodley as anybody has ever been, in my opinion. He was more impressive than Usman was when he won the belt. And I think Burns has jumped that weight class, and he's on a roll, and he deserves to get that shot at the point where he is. Whether or not he's better than Usman or not, their teammates, I know that'll have some sort of a play on it. But there's fighters who miss an opportunity to go for a belt, and then something about their streak, their people figure them out more, they get older, whatever it is. I remember Karo Parisien a long time ago, and I trained with Karo a little bit immediately before he entered the UFC, and so I was really big on what was going on. He was supposed to fight Matt Hughes for the belt, and he had to pull out, and I can't remember who stepped in, what fight it was that took place instead of Karo. At this point, I'd have to go through it, but you know, Karo was on a serious roll at that point as far as the guys he had beaten, and I think he had either just come off beating Diaz or was one fight removed from it possibly. But that would have been stylistically a fight I would have absolutely loved to have seen at the time. Hughes against Parisian. Man, sometime we should do a conversation just about fights that could have happened but didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to jump on ESPN and get caught up with the old school.
Yeah. That's definitely my strong suit. Is for a long time I had a disgustingly large VHS tape trading collection from the internet. But yeah, I think Burns deserves a shot. I think Masvidal definitely deserves a favorable matchup, not because I believe in doing that sort of thing, but simply because he took this fight on short notice and it shouldn't derail what he has accomplished. He was definitely the fighter last year. And there's fighters that would be a phenomenal fight, but would be very difficult. Stylistically, Covington against Masvidal would be a hellacious battle. I would love to see.
Same. I would love to see that fight.
As far as title fight goes, yeah, I definitely think Burns should get the shot he deserves.
Absolutely. All right. Well, looks like we're coming up on our time limit here, Chris.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll stop the recording and we'll let you go. It was good talking to you, man. Hopefully next time our other two hosts will jump on.
Yeah. Well, a couple others, and I won't have to fill the air with so much conversation.
Right? No, man, it's great to hear from you, man. It's been so long.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. I appreciate the invitation, and yeah, I'll definitely be here for the next one. We got another UFC coming up tomorrow night, I think, and then another one Saturday. So we got two fight islands. I think both of those are available to be watched by the majority of people. For those of you, I'm not doing a plug here, but if you don't have ESPN Plus, it's definitely worth getting. It's cheap, and there's some.
All I did was pair it with my Disney and my Hulu. It was like like $14 a month for all three.
Yeah. I think I get Disney for free through Verizon. So if you guys at home have Verizon and you're not getting Disney for free, I think you should. And ESPN for me, then it's like $5.99. And to see all the UFC fights and then like the 30 for 30s that they have on there, and the old fights that you can go through and find. I'm not talking just like UFC fights, but just they definitely worth putting your money into. Don't be cheap.
Absolutely.
$5.99.
All right, Chris, you have a good night, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Bye.